Hi, it's Matt. How you doing? Welcome to another video. So today I thought I would talk about Led Zeppelin's fourth album, the Led Zeppelin Untitled, released in 1971. This is an absolute classic, one of my favourites. It's a bit timeless. It's one of those that's been always very popular and sold loads of copies. So I thought I'd just start out just kind of giving my kind of overview of the album and then just going through a few issues that I own, a few pressings. I went a bit mad for this album a while ago and bought quite a few versions, but I did sell a few eventually. Just because I just had too many of them in my collection, so I kept the ones that I really liked. But hopefully I can go through and just go through them with you, and we can have a brief discussion and talk about them. So starting off with a bit of a discussion, really, this album was for me actually one of the things I noticed was it was the first one they really started to do a lot of their own stuff. I know it sounds really bad to say it, but everybody knows the first three albums they kind of they used a lot of other people's lyrics, a lot of other people's songs, and they kind of jazzed them up and really kind of filled them out. But with the fourth album, they really kind of start to show their own kind of musicianship, and I think a lot of the tracks on here were just absolutely fantastic, and they it really demonstrate just how good they could be. Um, Obviously, the final track, when the levee breaks, the lyrics were used from Memphis Minnie's song, and they kind of credited her appropriately when they first released the album. I suppose it's quite interesting because when she wrote that song, it was kind of referring to her time and her experience during the Great Flood in Mississippi in 1927, and it's kind of interesting how they used that, and at least she got credited appropriately for it anyway. But obviously, the main track on here is "Stairway to Heaven." And that was obviously, everybody knows this. It's a magnificent piece of music. It's absolutely timeless, and it was one that when I first started getting into Led Zeppelin, it really stood out for me. Really, I think, to be honest, if I had to pick a favorite album of the series, it probably would be the second album. But to be honest, when I really obviously when I started listening to them more and more, the fourth album, the Untitled one, really kind of stuck out for me. I think it was Stairway to Heaven that really kind of brought it to prominence, and made it what it was really. But it was interesting because obviously, as people know, Spirit, the American band, took out a lawsuit recently against Led Zeppelin for the similarity in the opening sequence to Stairway to Heaven to their song Taurus. And obviously that was taken to the Court of Appeals, and yeah, I think it was put in Led Zeppelin's favour, and that was that. But I think even with all that, I think that, it didn't really drag him through the mud too much, and I think it's still an amazing song. But nonetheless, fantastic stuff. So going back to the first track on the album, Black Dog. This was, I think it's just great. It's kind of like a hard rock masterpiece, really. It's just kind of that rolling opening sequence, and then you've got that kind of, Plant's kind of "Hey Mama." It just really jumps out. And then as you're going kind of through into the album, it kind of like moves on to a few more kind of acoustic tracks, and then there's maybe a couple one or two that I wouldn't be too keen on. Maybe Misty Mountain Harp, I probably was a bit meh when I first heard that, but after a few listens, I kind of got into it a bit more. But all in all, this has got some really fantastic tracks, and it's definitely one of their best albums. I think it's certainly in my top three at least. So I'm going to move on now and just kind of go through the pressings that I have. I'm going to start with the Classic Records 200 gram, released in 2005. So now, I do like the Classic Records series, and I think Bernie Grundman did an amazing job on a lot of them, particularly the Led Zeppelin albums. There was a few of these released. There was 180 gram in 2001 and the 200 gram in 2005. Now, I did buy a few of these when they first probably about 2006, 2007, a couple of years after. And I found the classic record series to be a little bit of a minefield, really. Some of them can sound fantastic, amazing, astounding, but I felt that a few of them, I'm not sure. But I think of the Led Zeppelin series, I think this was actually done really, really well. I really like the sound on this. I mean, I think a lot of the other Zeppelin albums by Classic Records, some of them, the mid-range, kind of the mid-range, upper mid-range frequencies were a bit kind of all over the place. The bass is very powerful. It's incredibly dynamic, but I think that there was kind of a bit up and down in parts. I think this works. It works really well on this album. I think it sounds fantastic. It sounds really, really good. And to be honest, I didn't really fully appreciate the sound of this until I actually upgraded my system, which is quite surprising because, I mean, a lot of the other albums when I upgraded, I did notice there was a difference in sound, but it wasn't really night and day. You didn't notice the kind of significance in it. But when I spun this, the sound quality was massively improved. So I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, this Classic Records, these have gone up in price significantly now. I mean, I think these are going for what, 350, £400 plus now on Discogs. This is just, they're a little bit ridiculous. And although they sound absolutely fantastic, this one does anyway, I think that is quite a bit to pay, for that kind of sound quality, really. But I mean, if you like the Classic Record series, that's absolutely fine. I understand exactly why. Some of them do sound amazing. I did sell a lot of my other Led Zeppelin Classic Records albums. I felt that there were others in the series that sounded actually a lot better. And when I got hold of a Led Zeppelin II, Robert Ludwig, that kind of smoked the Classic Records, so I just went and sold that. And the first pressing for Led Zeppelin III, that was better, so I sold the Classic Records 3, etc. I never owned the first album though, the self-titled on Classic Records, but apparently that's supposed to sound amazing. But anyway, I don't want to digress there. So moving on, this is the first UK pressing. This is on the Plum and Red label, as many know. I'm not sure if you can see that there. There's quite a few label variations for this album. I think there's about 8 different variations in total. So the lacquer for the first issue was cut by George Peckham. Now, he was known for cutting quite hot. The sound was very vibrant, very loud. And you'll notice in the dead wax for these first issues and a lot of the subsequent reissues where the lacquer was used, it's got the Pecco duck Porky on the in the run out in the dead wax etched. So that's kind of like it usually signifies that it's got his cut. But this sounds amazing. This sounds very natural, very strong. Great sound stage, very full sound. I think this could be probably it could just take over the Classic Records in terms of the sonic experience. Really, it's got the kind of the mid-range frequency, the upper mid-range frequency that's kind of missing a little bit in parts on the Classic Records. I could listen to this on a low end turntable and an upper end turntable, and it still sounds amazing. Which is always good, but this sounds really nice. These go for depending on the version. I think the medium price is probably around the £100 mark for a VG Plus copy. I think this is a VG sleeve, upper end VG Plus media, and these, I'm not sure, it's probably worth about maybe 150. No, probably less than that, actually, about 120. I haven't actually checked Discogs. But yeah, this is probably, I think, of the 3 albums I'm going to show you here, this probably sounds the best. Other people might say the Classic Records, which is fine. I understand exactly why. But yeah, to my ear, on my system, this one takes the lead. Very nice sound, very rich, very natural. Bonham's drums come through perfectly. You've got Plant's voice, which sounds great. So I'd say I'd recommend it, but if you're looking for a good sounding copy, this is a good one to get. So moving on to my final one here. This is quite interesting. This is the transition pressing. This is released in 1972, and it's using the same lacquer as they used in the first issue. Now, it's interesting because I bought this for £8 in a record shop in my hometown. Well, I'm living in Manchester at the moment, but I'm originally from Lancaster, and I went to a record shop in a coastal town called Morecambe, which isn't too far, and they had this. It was for £8, and I was like, why is it so cheap? I couldn't believe it. The record was so clean, really, really like near mint, and I got home. I just bought it because I thought this is bargain. Got home, spun it. My God, it sounded absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. So this was a big shock for me, and if you're, I'm going to recommend one. If you're looking to upgrade a copy of Led Zeppelin IV, or you're looking to buy one, you're getting into Zeppelin, or you're looking to upgrade, this is the one to get. These are on Discogs for about £20, £15 to £20, VG Plus. This sounds amazing. Like, this is really, really, really good. It's very close to the first press. It's got a very rich sound, very detailed, quite dynamic. It's essentially the same as the first, like the lacquer that was used in the first press. So it's basically going to sound very similar. I mean, I would say it doesn't sound exactly the same. I'm not really sure why, but the sound of this is fantastic, absolutely phenomenal. When you turn it up as well, my God, it booms. So yeah, this is really good. This is a transition pressing. It's got the green and orange label there. You can see there's no writing in the first half of it. This is a transition 1972. But yeah, absolutely amazing. If you're looking for a cheap, decent sounding copy of this record, then I honestly cannot recommend that enough. And there's a ton of them, about 30 of them on Discogs when I checked. So honestly, definitely want to recommend. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been interesting or informative. And it'd be always nice if you could like, subscribe, etc. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and bye bye.